And as we always like to do, we jump in with our best and worst. So what was the best and worst things you saw today?
Let's start with the best here, Adam. I just liked how some of the defensive players were just making plays on the football. We saw Jack Sanborn almost intercept Caleb Williams on an outbreaking route. He jumped the route that was intended for Gerald Everett. So really good play by Jack Sanborn, filling in for TJ Edwards at the time. And then you saw right at the very end of practice, Jalen Johnson batted a pass that was intended for Colin Johnson at the back right corner in the end zone. He celebrated with the fans. And then Tremaine Edmonds had 2 plays where he's covering Cole Kmet and just making a play on the football and making it difficult for Caleb Williams to complete pass. So I like the competitiveness from the defensive players. My worst, 2 of the last 3 throws, Adam, for Caleb Williams on Tuesday's practice went to Cole Kmet, and they were in the back of the end zone. One was in that 2-minute period where I think it was just a really good coverage by Tremaine Edmonds, really didn't give Cole and Caleb a window to really fit the ball into. But the second one that happened on the opposite side of the field, I had a good vantage point because I was in that end zone. It was a very similar route where Cole wanted a back shoulder, but Cole broke out. Caleb threw the ball in. They kind of looked at each other like there's miscommunication on the play. So, if they can make those tight window throws, things that they can connect on, it's only going to make things a lot more difficult for defenses to defend, but still got to work out some of the kinks as he's trying to figure out the chemistry, Caleb Williams, with all of his different receivers.
Yeah, so I feel like some of our best and worst are flip-flopping here because it always depends on which side of the ball you're looking at, right? Yeah. So I happen to like how the defense stood up at the end of that 2-minute drill and made a stop, because we saw too many times last year, even after Montez Sweat got here, even after the defense was playing well, but they couldn't close the deal in the fourth quarter. And they let a few games slip away. So hearing Eric Washington talk after practice today and saying that those are gut check moments where you got to dig down deep, communication has to be there, can't give in. It's a critical situation, and you got to find a way to close out the game. That's basically what the defense did today. They closed out the practice. That 2-minute drill by Caleb Williams in the offense was pretty good. I mean, they got down the field. They got down to what I believe, a 2nd and goal from the 7-yard line before those last 3 throws that you were just talking about. And I agree that, maybe the ball placement could have been a little bit better. I think some of that's communication. Also notable, DJ Moore was not out there for that 2-minute drill, and Keenan Allen was having a vet day today. So those 2 top targets were not even on the field. All that being said, big time plays by Tyreek Stevenson with a PBU on Rome Odunze on 3rd down. And then, as you just mentioned, Tremaine Edmonds coming up big on Cole Kmet on 4th down to get the stop. So I like that defensive stop. That defensive stand was big, and that was the best thing I saw today. On the flip side, you mentioned Jack Sanborn jumping that route, using those Jack Sanborn instincts that we know and we see all the time, and it was a great play to make that PBU in that situation. Also, there was a deep ball down the field to Tyler Scott that Caleb Williams, it looked like a busted coverage. Tyler Scott caught it, and then kind of as he went to the ground, went down. Those were the 2 worst plays I saw today, and here's why. Those were 2 touchdowns that did not go on the scoreboard. Jack Sanborn has to catch that ball, and it's a pick 6. Tyler Scott, I'm not 100% sure. I'd love to see a replay. We don't get replays in training camp. I'm not positive that it was the most perfect deep ball of all time from Caleb Williams. Like, there was definitely an adjustment that needed to be made, but this is the NFL. And one of the strengths we always talk about with Rome Odunze is his ability to adjust to the football in the air and kind of keep that body control when you have to make tough adjustments to stay on your feet. That was a walk-in touchdown if they connect with him staying on his feet. And I just, with really having no way to prove this, it feels like if that's DJ Moore, if that's Keenan Allen, if that's even Rome Odunze, that's probably a touchdown. Whereas one of Rome's strengths there, I feel like, is Tyler Scott's weakness. Tyler Scott's great route runner. He's got great speed. More times than not, he catches the ball. But we saw it in some games last year too, where it's just the ability to stay on your feet and adjust to the ball in the air. I don't know if that's Tyler Scott's greatest strength at this point. And regardless of who you're going to blame on those two plays, if you're the Bears, if you're the coaching staff, you just say, we got to have it. Those are 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. And for Tyler Scott, it's like, he definitely should keep his feet, but there were times last year where it's like, just catch the ball. So it's like we're making these incremental steps, right? Where he did that part. Now you got to get to the next part, get the yards after the catch, finish the play. Yes, I would like to see a replay on that one. It looked like Tyler had to extend his hands out a little bit to go get it. But, hey, you're an NFL wide receiver. You get paid to stay in bounds, make the big plays, and did make the reception explosive gain against Tyreek Stevenson. But could he have gotten more? Probably.
In general, though, I thought, and by the way, if I sound like I'm being tough on those 2 plays, I mean, that's the standard you got to have. I feel like, you got to, the easy play is, I'm not even saying it's easy. It's great to have the PBU. It's great to have Jack Sanborn get in the way of the pass and knock it down. It's great to have a busted coverage and get downfield and complete the pass. It was a deep ball downfield, but that next level is, those should be walk-in touchdowns. And that's what Super Bowl contenders do. So I think the Bears are working towards that. And I think it's cool that we can kind of hold these guys to higher standards, because this gets back to some of the positive stuff. I'm seeing what I feel like are a well-oiled practice on both sides of the ball right now. Like, we are not seeing a lot of false starts, a lot of busted plays, a lot of flags, a lot of just, practices. We've seen disjointed practices all the time at Halas Hall. And I am very encouraged by that not being what we're seeing right now. I thought they ramped it up today. Eric Washington talked about that a little bit after practice. Even though they're not in pads, they kind of let them go a little bit more in the pass rush. We saw a few both offense winning, defense winning pass rushes where it felt, even without the pads popping, a little bit more real. I mean, Nate Davis stood up Jerron Dexter at one point, and it was like, oh, that was real. And on the flip side, Darnell Wright got beat pretty bad on another one
by Jacob Martin.
Who
right underneath.
Yeah, and like that was like, those are the 1 or 2 O-line, D-line matchups per practice when the pads aren't on that you can say that actually translates to Sunday, and that actually was a clean win.
Yeah. I still, to speak to like the cleanliness of practice, it also feels like there's not a lot of downtime. Like, you're going between team period to team period on the ball. That hits principle that Eberflus preaches. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of in-between time. So when they're going and doing their drills in each period, there's a sense of urgency as they're kind of doing things. And like you said, it was interesting when I was watching Caleb, there were a couple times where he's getting the play call from Shane and he just has his hand on his helmet. And I think there was like 2 or 3 reps where it just seemed like it took a little bit longer. And I don't know if there was a miscommunication thing in the helmet or what was going on there, but for the most part, you're not seeing the pre-snap penalties. I think there was, like you said, maybe 1, and there's only been at least 1 in a practice, not multiple where we've seen in like early on in OTAs. So that is a good thing in terms of the operation, because again, a different starting center in this practice than there was in Monday's practice. You had Coleman Shelton, the guy. Yesterday was Ryan Bates. So you keep alternating the starting centers as they kind of go in between these training camp practices.
Yeah, and that's apparently going to continue for the foreseeable future. And when it stops, we'll probably have a better idea of who the center is. But I would imagine that ends up getting decided in some preseason games. And certainly when the pads at least go on, which, by the way, now triple confirmed will be Friday. I know there's been some confusion out there. Johns and I were laughing about this yesterday on Hoge and Johns. It's like a annual tradition that for some reason we can't get the first padded practice straight. But it is going to be Friday. So if you were fortunate enough to get tickets for Friday's practice, that's when the pads will go on. I have not confirmed that they'll do it again on Saturday, but you would think they would go back-to-back pads before another off day Sunday. And tomorrow is their first off day at camp. Come back Thursday with a non-padded practice. Pads Friday, pads Saturday, off again Sunday. That seems to make a lot of sense. And Javon Dexter and I seen eye to eye when he says, I can't wait. Pads go on. Let's do this thing.
Yeah, he's and especially at line play, like Darnell Wright, all of the trenches guys. That's when it really becomes football for them, because right now it's too much. If it's defense has the advantage for sure, so it's going to be good for those offensive players to finally put on the pads and then show what they can actually do on the football field.
And just talking about the ambiance a little bit, I don't know how you feel, Nick, but I certainly, when there's fans there, like that long walk up we have, downfield drive, walking up to the building, like you feel some of the goosebumps a little bit. Like it's like, okay, it feels like there's a real energy here, like we're ready to go. And we just have not felt that before today. So while today we're still not technically to the open practices to the public where they had tickets available, the Bears do have a bunch of community days, and one of them was today with a lot of fans and teams from local flag football teams and things like that. We saw a lot of kids out there today, which was cool. A lot of young football players. So maybe not quite the highest of the energy we'll get when Greg Braggs and his people arrive on Friday.
People are buying beers, Yeah. We're
ramping up.
We're leveling up, as Eberflus likes to say, for sure.
And then once that happens, I believe Thursday too, they are allowed to go longer in practice. So right now, I think they're limited to 2 hours, and they're using like the first almost half hour of that to be like walkthrough time right now. And then I think it's Thursday's practice is when by the CBA they're allowed to go longer in practice, because we've seen now each of the last 2 days they've actually had to cut right at the end of the period because of time. They're restricted a certain amount of time. They can't break the rules. And so Tyson Bagent's 2-minute drill that actually got cut off at the end, and they were actually moving down towards the end zone.
You have to make sacrifices sometimes. I will say the last 2 practices, there has been way more team period than they would have a little bit more 7-on-7s going on. But these last 2 practices, a lot more team period, which I think is the most beneficial when you're coming to practice.
We all silly like the mayor.